All right, I think we can get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining in. I'm Pranshu. I'll be moderating the session. We have a really interesting session planned for today. We have 3 expert panelists with us. We'll divide our entire discussion into two sections. We'll start by consumer behavior, and secondly, we'll talk about supply chain. So these will be 2 sections. Feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A box below. We'll try as much as possible to accommodate those. But yeah, let me start by introducing our panelists here. We have with us Shibu. Shibu heads e-commerce at Vanity Cart. Vanity Cart caters to fashion, beauty, fragrance, and wellness needs of women. Shibu has, I think, more than 20 years of experience in the Middle East, worked with some of the biggest companies there. Next, we have with us Bharath. Bharath is the head of supply chain and customer service at Styly. Styly is a fashion e-commerce arm of Landmark Group, very well-known expert in the e-commerce supply chain domain in the region. The third panelist is Mohamed Bahaa. Bahaa is co-founder and CTO of Vimo, one of the most disruptive cross-border delivery platforms in the Middle East. Right, so we have 2 people from e-commerce sector and 1 from the logistics and tech sector. Right, so thanks so much, panelists, for joining in.
Thank you, Pranshu. I think we should be thanking you for organizing this for us, and we look forward to a good time. Let's hope that we have an interesting session ahead.
Thanks, Pranshu, for the wonderful introductions. Look forward to the session.
Thank you, Pranshu, for the introduction, and thank you for putting me with such experts in our industry.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. All right. So let's get started with our first section. Now, the first section is on consumer behavior, right? So in Saudi Arabia, in a survey by Juweri Group, it was observed that 55% of respondents bought grocery online in April compared to just 6% before the outbreak, right? In another independent case, UAE Carrefour saw a 59% increase in new online consumers during COVID-19. Right. So while this is the sale of essential goods, these people will now shift to non-essential e-commerce in the coming days as well, right? And a lot of first-time buyers will be added. So my first question is for Bharath. Bharath, what are the key e-commerce KPIs that you see getting impacted due to these first-time buyers?
Right. So in one of the articles, you mentioned about a study that you had also checked, Pranshu. So in one article that I read in Vogue Business, right, what it mentions is this time in history probably is the biggest tectonic shift that you'll see of customers and consumers moving to e-commerce, right? So that will have a cascading effect on multiple metrics. So let me start off by some that I have also seen in my business and other businesses in the region, right? The increase in prepaid orders is here to stay. Right, so this region has predominantly been a cash-heavy region. So if you come from other mature e-commerce markets like say the US or Europe or even India to some extent, right? So this has been a cash-heavy market, and now there is a tectonic shift that's happening towards prepaid. And this movement to prepaid will have multiple repercussions, right? Your delivery rates will be impacted. Your entire last mile network will have to be sort of equipped with that capacity and infra to handle this surge in prepaid orders. So, okay, in terms of metrics, first, there's an increase in prepaid orders. And 2, because of the uncertainty in the situation, right, consumers are even more anxious to know the status of their orders. So how well is a business able to communicate the statuses to its consumers is a very important metric. And the business metric that gets impacted with this is a CX metrics that there's different terminologies in different organizations. I would like to call it as IPO, right? Interactions per order. So these interactions could be how many reaches you have on social media, how many incoming chats you have on your chatbot, or how many calls or emails that you get from consumers, right? So this is definitely another metric that is on the rise. May not be as desirable as an increase in prepaid for businesses, but definitely a metric that we need to tackle in this region. And the third, this will see a surge of new users coming into e-commerce, right? This could be one of their first orders that they're placing digitally. And because of this, there would be many impulse purchases, many test purchases. Your delivered percentage, which is like the lodestar or the guiding star for any e-commerce supply chain team, is going to see a major impact with this influx of new consumers. So from a very tactical as well as from a long-term point of view, these three metrics are sort of playing on my mind, I think, is similar to many businesses across the region as well.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, a quick trivia there. So Saudi government has one of the objectives to increase the digital payments from 30% in about 2020 to close to 70% in 2013. And this is something that they set up long back. I think that will probably get achieved sooner than later.
Absolutely.
In e-commerce, it will probably be even higher, right? Right. So, Bahaa, my next question is to you. What is your perspective on the same question from the logistics side? Right. So, do you think that delivering goods to first-time buyers is different from serving regular buyers?
I would say it's all about managing expectations at the first time. So first-time buyers are mainly strangers to your business, right? When they come to you from a different background, from a different world of purchasing something and getting it in hand at the same time, you need to be careful about managing expectations, and that's one of the things that Bharath was talking about, or the CX matrix. So you need to manage expectations and promises. So of course, delivering to first-time buyers, it should be different. However, that was not something that we were looking at as e-commerce players or logistics players. For us, there were other factors that we were always considering while delivering the product. But I think because, as Bharath said, this is the time in history where we see most of newcomers to the e-commerce world it's now sorry, it's now crystal clear that we need to differentiate between first-time buyers and regular buyers. We need to set expectations for these guys, because that will decide if they will come back again or not, because they used to totally different experience, as I said.
Yeah, got it. Are you also seeing an increase in failed delivery attempts with these first-time buyers, or is that not a big trend?
In general, yes, there are. With a paid or prepaid factor coming in the picture, things are a little bit balanced. But yes, we see a lot of failed attempts. People who actually don't think that what they did is actually they placed an order. Now placing an order online has become easier than these new buyers thought it would be. So who are you? What is this? I didn't order this ever. So we are facing new type of customers where they actually don't know why you are here at the doorstep, or what did they order sometimes, and they didn't get used to the normal communication channels between the delivery associates who are contacting them sometimes to say I'm having a delivery for you. So yes, but I think that's people are getting adapted so fast. So if you look at the curve, the failure rates of the deliveries when the pandemic starts was so high, as high as the demand was, and then it became lower very, very fast in time.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So I think failed deliveries is probably a challenge that the industry would be looking at. Okay. My next question is for Shibu. Shibu, in which categories which normally have high discretionary spend, like fashion and fragrance, which you cater to, do you see customer sentiment moving towards low value products, and how would high value brands react to it?
Well, Pranshu, I think you've kind of put 4 questions clubbed into one question. One is you've spoken about the fashion and beauty categories as to how this industry is going. Obviously, I'm talking pre-pandemic. These were all growth categories. Just a few trillion-dollar industries is what we are discussing when you say fashion and beauty across globally. Yeah. So yes, this has brought in a lot of change right now with what we are confronted with, and obviously we are going to see a huge change in the way these industries are going to behave. You mentioned about customer sentiments and the low value products. Mm-hmm. Let's call it rightly priced products instead of low value, because when you say low value, there could be many interpretations to it. With your permission, I would like to address it as rightly priced products. Let's say, for example, in the electronics industry, if you talk about growth categories, everywhere the retail industry is going down, but suddenly the demand for laptops has gone up big times because everything is going online, studies are going online. So when you have laptops increasing, along with it, you have sales of headphones and accessories also increasing. So if one thing goes down, there could be something else which is going up. One needs to identify which are those categories. Apart from that, when you talk of beauty, let me also tell you, there are a good number of organic and natural brands which are there today in UAE and in India as well, in many parts. And these were brands which were not available offline, primarily because of the challenges to be present in the offline industry. We all know the challenges if a new brand needs to be present in offline, what are the challenges they are facing. And there have been a good number of brands who are selling only online. And probably these are those brands who could see the future of where the market is going towards. They held on to it and they said, we will go online. And this is where they have been going. So hats off to them. As far as customer sentiments go, I think both my friends here have spoken about it. You have yourself mentioned about some very interesting numbers of how the essential product category sale is increasing. 59% is what Carrefour UAE you mentioned. The first time buyers, both of you spoke. We too have experienced an increase in the first time buyers. Yes, there is one particular trait of this industry, especially in UAE market, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree with me, is that the people here, they would like to test the website first. They do some test marketing, purchases orders, see how to establish the trust factor. Once they are comfortable with you, and especially that's where it is very important what Bahaa mentioned in terms of meeting the first time buyers requirement, in terms of meeting the deadlines, in terms of commitments, it's very important. They come back to you, and that's why probably Bharath mentioned that the credit card transactions seems to be increasing now. We have experienced something very similar, but if you speak of customer sentiments, I would say the discounting factor, the mindset which is there for discounting will deepen its grip on the consumers, especially with the financial implications that have been happening today. People have had the option of looking at lower priced brands or rightly priced brands. They made a shift to test it during this period due to various reasons. And I think there is various data which says that the trading down of the consumers has increased over a period of time. And if they are satisfied with these brands, the performance, I don't think even if the financial situation improves, there is going to be a trade up from these brands upwards by the consumers. This is where I see a lot of new brands actually entering the market. And once you meet the demands of the customers, I think they've been a little demanding, and rightly so when they come online. But this situation has also pushed them to be a little more understanding as well, which is what we have seen when there has been a delay in terms of deliveries because of the rush. People are much more understanding today. So these, I think, are the positives which the current situation has brought into the market. Moving ahead, needless to mention, these first-time buyers, you have kind of given them an opportunity to experience some convenience and comfort. And once they are there, they are here to stay. So yes, pricing, you mentioned about whether the prices will be going down. I think the supply chain, by itself, Bharath would agree with me, that's a big subject by itself. And I'm sure many organization, brands and vendors are currently discussions in closed doors in terms of the short-term and long-term strategies. The supply chain, I think, will undergo massive change, where the pricing will have a huge impact, and especially the top international brands. I know of some brands who have actually been working on this for quite some time, and we are about to see a huge change and shift is what I see. Some more categories, if I were to talk of, that you mentioned are seeing some improvement, is probably, you know, in the beauty sector, I would say personal care products. You know, everything sale has gone down, but suddenly hygiene has become very important. The salons and the spas are closed. So suddenly the sale of products like epilators, shavers, trimmers has increased. And I know of brands, some brands have been talking of no stocks of these products. So yes, it's a good mix. The current situation has helped some brands to actually up the sales. Things like you might even see, even if the salons and spas, whenever they open in the UAE, I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with rules which says that you carry your own device to the salons and spas. You will carry your own epilators, you'll carry your own stylers, and then you see a new rule coming into place. So yes, good time for e-commerce for sure. And certain industries, certain brands would definitely reap the harvest.
Just to add, right? Just to add to this, I think one other interesting category that sort of picked up in recent times is in-house fitness, right? So all of this fitness equipment is basically, I mean, what was the growth rate, right, is close to 20 to 30x. And that is like one product category that's seen such a massive shift. What was maybe like around, say, around 10 treadmills being shipped out every day. Now it's closer to 250 to 300 every day, right? I mean, these are just like numbers from other retailers in the region, but yes, that is one category that has definitely seen a huge shift. And also, since we're talking about the first-time consumers and the increase of prepaid, what will also happen is, I believe this entire pandemic or crisis will only end up accelerating the digitization that was already in place, right? So if you look at, as Pranshu also mentioned, right, Saudi government, it had an objective to increase the prepaid wallet share by 30% is what you're mentioning, from 30% to 50%.
70%,
yeah. Right? So what is happening is this is just accelerating that, because now as a general population, we are all extra wary and cautious about anything that's got to do with hygiene, right? And cash, which is one of the most frequently transacted pieces of paper, has a high level of taboo associated with it now. So I would like to pay by card, I would like to pay by tap, not even get my card into the machine, right? Technology which have been with us like for the maybe the past 5-6 years, NFC, right? NFC through Google phones or even iOS with Apple Pay is sort of revolutionizing that. I don't even need to touch my card. I just need to hover it around any device. It just takes my payment. So those sort of things will continue to see, and mobile wallets or e-wallets, their share will only increase in the coming few days. And this region with its own regulations and laws, I think the market is wide open for folks who want to sort of be the first movers or get a really cool, crisp, simple tech that will enable cashless transactions. I think now is the time, and we're already seeing a lot of traction there. So even governments are entering the foray, right? So in Saudi, you have telecom companies like STC coming with STC Pay. I think now this will see a further increase in STC Pay. STC Pay is already a very prevalent mode of payment. With everything going cashless, that will see. Apple Pay is anyway one of the major prepaid channels right now. So all of this, I think, is leading to accelerating the change that was already there. So the entire ecosystem, I think, is in for a interesting ride ahead. That's what I would say.
Yep, absolutely. I think a lot of categories you mentioned probably, since there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs in the audience, an important piece of advice for all of you. All right. So moving on, there's an important piece of trivia. So Dubai has announced a city dedicated to e-commerce. They're calling it Dubai Commerce City. It'll have offices, about 105 warehouses, restaurants, everything in the same place. And there would be no corporate tax, no income tax, 100% foreign company ownership. So I think there would be a huge opportunity for foreign companies to set up their operations in Dubai, right? Especially e-commerce operations. And Bharath, my question around this to you, how do you see the job market evolving in the e-commerce segment?
Right. So, so broadly, the way I would like to answer this is, right, as I mentioned, the ecosystem is right now in an accelerated mode of digitization, right? Mm-hmm. So that will bring with it a requirement of multiple skill sets that may or may not be available right now. So there are a lot of folks who are upskilling themselves right now in the market, and a lot of hires that are being got. I mean, not only local hires, but even expat hires are happening, right? So e-commerce in general, hiring is going to stay and only increase, right? I know for a fact of a bunch of firms within the region which have increased hiring post this entire pandemic. In the last month, I've seen multiple CVs being floated around, multiple positions being opened around. These are all major retailers, right? So hiring is only going to increase in this particular industry if you have to look at it that way. But again, how well is a candidate able to bridge the gap between the skill and existing skill and the required skill, right? That will play a very crucial role. How do I sort of upskill myself to match the current industry requirements? But openings wise, yes, it's going to increase, and it has already increased in the last 2 months, is what I can say.
Okay.
Can I add something to what Bharath had mentioned?
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a very pertinent question what you asked. I think yes, people are going through tough times today. What one needs to understand is, do not panic in this situation. This is a time when a lot of corrections are being made. Let that happen. Yeah. And during this period, as Bharath was meant, probably what he meant was this is the time that one needs to understand what are the requirements which are going to come up, upgrade your skills. There are so many opportunities today. This is the time one should, if you know that the e-commerce is going to flourish, which we all know, are you ready for the e-commerce market? Do you have the skill sets required? You could get into graphic designing. You just get into these stuff. Just upgrade your skills. And as Bharath rightly mentioned, the recruitments has to happen because the industry has to move on. The economy has to come back. So people will need these resources. They will need people with the skill sets. And it's a matter of a couple of months before you see things falling back into normal. So do not press the panic button. Easier said than done. I know it. We've all going through it. But I just wanted to remind once again what Bahaa mentioned, when we were just having the chat before we started this session, where he said that the old is gone and the new has come. We will not go back to the old. It was very pertinent, you see. So we are into the new now. So let's remain with the new and let's not go back to the old. That's it.
To double down on what the gentleman said. Basically, a lot of people are asking what's going to happen to my job, or what's actually happening now to my job. Am I going to lose it? Or people who actually, unfortunately, lost their jobs. What I want to highlight here is these jobs will not stop. They will change. So whatever you're doing, you can keep doing, but in a different place. And I think in UAE, Al Futtaim has set a very good example where they shifted. They were able to shift a lot of their manpower from the unfunctional businesses to Carrefour, which saw a big hike, as you guys said. So we saw people from working for Vox Cinemas have been switched immediately to do sorting and dispatching in Carrefour area, and that was impressive. And that's actually what is happening. That is actually what's happening. You can keep doing what you're doing, but you have to do it somewhere else or in a different way now. So as Shibu said, don't press the panic button now. Just have a look around, see what's going on, and see where your new position will be in this picture, in this scene.
Absolutely.
Again, a very generic sort of nothing specific to this pandemic, but a very generic sort of response would be all of us have been hiring, right, for the past few years. We know what sort of candidates we look at. But if you look at it, one common trait, I think that will stand the test of even this crisis is, am I adaptable? Am I flexible to learn? and am I open to learning, right? So when I sort of meet candidates for any positions, right, I look at more than skills, how is their attitude, right? I mean, is the person open to learning? Is the person open to exploring a different part of a job that he or she may not have done earlier, right? So it's all about being flexible and open and the thirst to learn, right? So these again, I mean, that's what I was saying, that even before the entire pandemic, these were skill sets or these were traits that I was anyway looking at. And these skill sets or traits will continue to remain even during this crisis, right? But yes, unfortunately, there are many businesses which are seeing their operations being unsustainable at this point of time. But I think folks with this sort of an attitude, definitely, I don't think there's going to be any dearth of opportunities for them.
Yep. All right. I think that sort of ends our first section. We'll now move on to the second section, which is on supply chain, right? And my first question is to Bharath.
Yep.
Bharath, let's start from the supplier side. In a lot of countries, companies are trying to set up local suppliers to minimize risk, right? I've seen that in the West, have seen that happening in India as well. Should companies in Middle East be doing it, or are they doing it right now?
Okay, I think it's a great question, Pranshu, because right now across the globe, you're seeing this sentiment of moving manufacturing bases locally, right? Be it in India, be it in even Europe and US. There's a lot of call for corporates and companies to set up manufacturing locally. What I believe is going to happen is moving this entire ecosystem to a particular country from the factory of the world right now, that is China, may not be sustainable in the short term or even the medium term, right? It's going to take a very, very long view of at least a decade and a half or two. That's what I would talk about. So if you ask whether in this region, is it going to happen anytime soon? My answer would be no. I don't think it's going to happen in this region. But again, there will be a certain changes in strategy, right? So across the globe, many retailers have been heavily dependent on Chinese manufacturing, right? Because of the amazing technology advances that they have, amazing cost advantage that they have. And they have built this entire regulatory plus technological plus a skill-based economy that is difficult to beat in any part of the country, in any part of the world at this point of time. So, manufacturing bases will not move out from China immediately. And also interesting information that all of us are aware of, China is now back to where it was. So China is already back in its feet and it is running, where the rest of the world is just sort of picking up from where the crisis has left us. China is running. It's almost at 95% of pre-pandemic production levels across industries. So with that sort of a resilience, it's difficult for me to sort of abandon China, right? And say that, no, I'll stop from there and start somewhere else. So it's not going to happen. And B, what will happen is I will, however, see a lot less of cross-border, because the way I transport goods from, say, my suppliers who are predominantly in, say, China or any of the Asian countries to my Middle Eastern region would broadly be two, right? One is air freight and one is sea. So air has been proved, it has proved to be a very, very unreliable partner, right? I mean, its elasticity with respect to the changes in the global situation has been very, very high. So any impact immediately impacts my air storage, air space availability, air cost availability, carriers cutting down its flights. So even with a reduction in demand, my prices are going through the roof. So why would I want to do that? So my reliance on cross-border would reduce. I would rather have a mix somewhere between having a healthy inventory-led model here. I would rather procure everything in bulk, store it in my FCs in Saudi, in UAE, in other parts of the GCC, and then serve my customers locally. That way, I'm able to protect or honor my customer demand. At the same time, I'm also buffering myself from any of the global shocks or that I may face because of crises like this, right? So I'll not abandon my sourcing capabilities from outside of GCC. At the same time, I will build some stock buffers, stock levels within. So that would mean a lot less reduction, a lot more reduction in cross-border, and I will see a definite increase in inventory-led models being proven to be sustainable or successful in the coming few years. Yeah, so if I do that strategically, my volumes are also going to shift from primarily what was air to sea, and then because sea freight has proven to be extra reliable. I mean, it's the impact of COVID for those who don't know, the impact of COVID has been minimal on the sea freight industry. The sea freights has increased by hardly about 10 to 15%, whereas my air freight has increased by about 200 to 250x.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's just not comparable. So I think it will be a sort of a tightrope balancing between both of these. I will not shift my manufacturing, but however, I will tweak the way in which I serve my customers in this region better. I'll go for inventory-led models and reduce my dependency on cross-border. That's how I would see this playing out, Pranshu.
Yep. A similar question to Shibu, right? Shibu, in your opinion, what is the future impact in cross-border movement of goods within the GCC?
Well, I partly agree with what Bharath had to say. However, I really am not too sure if the inventory-led model will take a huge share in it, because if you really look at it today, especially in the UAE and Saudi markets, there are various channels which have gone the inventory-led mode. And even today, the pressures or the after effects of that inventory model is being felt 6 months down the line. Without mentioning industry and brands, I know of brands who have pushed in the inventory into Saudi with some distributors and countries, and their forecast for the second half of 2019 has been zero. And that's because of the inventory-led model. Yeah. Dubai Customs, for example, I'm sure all of you are aware that we've already started this portal for cross-border, and where they are talking about easing out the customs, faster declaration processes, transparency. They're also talking of the first phase was launched in September 2019, and the second phase was somewhere in Jan 2020. And they've also taken care of the return process of the shipment if it happens. Now, let's also look at the advantages if and when, and we hope. I think the cross-border is going to be the next big one. After this forced change which we have seen in e-commerce industry currently, I think the next big change which we should be prepared for is definitely the cross-border. Because what happens is there are a few more industries which actually gain access along with the cross-border. As Bharath rightly mentioned, logistics is big one. The courier company is big one. It opens up avenues, a few other avenues in business as well. Not to forget that it gives you access to the local brands in different countries. Yeah. And I think if the manufacturing facility cannot be there, this could be replaced by the direct access of consumers to the local brands that are there. For example, today, if I have an access to an Indian brand in UAE locally, with the kind of population that you have in UAE or in Saudi for that matter, the Asian population, I think people actually look for these brands. And we have done a test marketing for this sort of some of these brands and products, and we have had very good results, I can tell you, because people actually look forward to it. But yes, I agree there are challenges. It's not gonna be easy, but what I say is that let's not be forced into a situation a couple of months or probably a year down the line where you're forced to embrace the cross-border. Because today, if you see, everyone is jumping on to e-commerce. Even a retailer who's got 20 stores, 40 stores presence across the UAE in offline never focused on online because it was just 5% or 10% of the total market. But now everyone is jumping into it, and the last 45 days, I think there are some retailers who have seen 100%, 200% growth in the online business. And my take for sure is that, and Dubai government has worked towards it. The logistics has been a strong point for UAE with Jebel Ali customs and everything in place. I think they've geared up to face the cross-border, and I think it's here to stay, and it's faster. It's going to come much more faster than what we would all anticipate.
Okay. Thanks, Shibu, for that. My next question is for Bahaa. Bahaa, can you talk a little bit about how technology is evolving in the e-commerce logistics space in the Middle East? Right. So, just as an example, in India, most e-commerce companies before the COVID situation used to get postal code serviceability from courier companies on Excel, right? And now, because this entire serviceability is changing very frequently, the e-commerce companies have started to get it over APIs. So it was a sort of a long due change that everyone wanted, but it was never happening. But because of this COVID situation now, it suddenly happened. So just want to understand from you, what are the logistics tech advancements that are happening there?
So I think in the e-commerce logistics for the last couple of years, we've been hearing and reading about these technologies disrupting or changing how e-commerce logistics works, and I think all of us we were a little bit kind of relaxed when it comes to the e-commerce logistics. I think people are started to take it now more serious. Handling and processing thousands of orders a day for e-commerce can be very challenging, right? And now we can see the gains of investing in technologies, in e-commerce logistics technologies for the last couple of years. So how this is affecting our current scene. There are certain topics that I said we were taking a little bit easy. So things like how you do your routing in your last mile, how is real-time visibility is important. Before it was not actually, yes, okay, fine, I need to get the status of my order at any point of time, but I'll get it at some point of time. As Bharath said at the beginning of the session, the customer now needs to know where's the order because I have no other option, right? So I cannot just cancel whatever I ordered online and go and get whatever I want to get. Now I need to know the status. So talking about things like IoT, Internet of Things, for example, which found one of the very early applications in logistics, such as GPS tracking. Now, all of these investments and all of these technologies, we started to see how it can transform, how it can actually help, e-commerce businesses become more profitable, I would say, and make the logistics part more affordable for customers. So yes, so I have seen these are things that was there pre-COVID, and we are seeing the results now during COVID, and it will continue to evolve post-COVID. And we have seen other applications. We have seen government applications that we've been using heavily to get permissions to actually go on the roads and start and deliver packages. So so that's one of the things that, actually technology helped very, very well. So we were now applying for permissions. Now you have your fleets, you have your staff on the ground, you have your staff in the airports, you have your staff everywhere. We are actually operating on the grounds, right? So being able to get permissions for people to continue functioning as usual was the technology played a very important role. We were informed about the blocked areas, such the same thing that happened in India actually happening in Saudi. So we were getting information about the blocked areas and the timings of the blockages. We were actually benefiting a lot from that, and we were able to use that in our planning with partners, with last mile partners, and it actually worked well. So as I said, things like route planning, real-time visibility, Internet of Things, and of course, on top of all of that, automation. So people are talking about automation all the time. Will robotics change the logistics scene? Actually, automation of the operational procedures, the day-to-day operation procedures. Automation will see a lot of attention in the next not years, the next weeks or months. People will start looking for automation because the operational shock that happened to the industry and the shortage of capacity that everyone is seeing, top to bottom, and not to exclude anyone, will definitely push everyone into how you can automate and use your current capacity, right, to handle more and to manage more and still meet expectations. So automation, real-time visibility, IoT, and routing and planning. These are all topics that was there way before COVID, but we're taking easy. Now I think they will be taking more serious, and we will start seeing applications on the ground very soon.
Yep. Yeah, very nicely concise, Bahaa. The 4 major areas where I believe logistics is going to automate a lot, right? Okay. My next question is for Bharath. Bharath, so from the e-commerce side, right? What are the top, say, 3 supply chain challenges that you see happening in the next 2 years, and how do we go about resolving them?
So, I think at the outset, right, what is becoming more clear with every passing day, and multiple experts, right from government authorities to subject matter experts like the Gates Foundation and everyone is saying that this is something called as a new normal, right? So that's a new normal that all of us, as individual citizens and people, along with businesses in the entire world, has to sort of adapt to. So, having said that, over the next 1.5 to 2 years, I broadly would say there are 3 areas, instead of specifying which challenges there are, 3 broad areas where I see a lot of disruption has happened because of this crisis. And I think there's going to be a lot of innovation and progress to be made, and that would be made in the coming few years, right? So first of those is the entire last mile delivery ecosystem, right? The reason I'm calling it as ecosystem is the problems are not specific to one particular. I just cannot say my courier partners are not working or the fleet on the ground is not working. No, the entire ecosystem, there's a lot of breakages that has happened in the last, because of the pandemic and the crisis. And there's a lot of areas where they can optimize on, right? So within the last mile ecosystem, I believe there is a strong case for introduction of a lot of technology, right? I would like to sort of borrow your question from the previous one and add on to what Bahaa also mentioned, that technology within last mile is going to play a very, very key role, right? And when I say that, it is applicable across the entire last mile ecosystem. So some examples are, I'm very sure, and in fact, I'm positive that contactless delivery is here to stay. And it doesn't just mean that I'm a delivery person, I just leave your parcel outside the door. No. Contactless delivery, wherein do I need a human rider to actually deliver an order, right? So already there is a bunch of work and pilots that have happened around drone delivery that is only going to accelerate. I think it's the regulatory aspects or regulatory authorities have been sort of lagging behind this progress. But once that framework is set in place, I think that is here to stay. So will my last mile delivery get impacted by that? And introduction of a lot of IoT technology, right? IoT has been on the cusp of going mainstream for the last 5-6 years. So now I think this will just accelerate it, right? Adding on to that, the most recent partnership that FedEx had with Microsoft. So they launched this entire IoT platform called FedEx Surround, which basically says that instead of reacting to situations on the ground right now, how can I proactively anticipate them, right? So I know this particular road at this particular time of the year is going to be blocked. So how do I sort of devise a new routing algorithm? And I know that this particular clearance route has taken 3 hours to clear my shipment. So is there any other lane that I can use for a 2.5 hours of clearance, right? So a lot of IoT based real-time tracking of shipments is going to be possible, especially with the focus on hygiene and pharma and healthcare products that we're talking about in this crisis. This is only going to increase, right? A lot of IoT technology. And again, with entire contactless and hygiene and health coming to the forefront, will I see an increase in my PUDO capacities? Will there be an uptake in customer adoption of PUDO, right? PUDO has so far been seen as a laggard or a not so desirable feature compared to a direct home delivery. But would my customers, would we want to sort of get it from a human rider in the next time? Or would I prefer to just drive down to my local locker room and then pick it up from there myself by entering my own specific locker code and ensuring that the hygiene is maintained there, right? So in this aspect, I think there's a lot of changes that's going to drive in the last mile ecosystem, a lot of interplay between tech to improve this particular bit, right? Having said that, the second, I would again go back to what I mentioned in the previous answer, right? There is a lot of relook that will happen at the sourcing strategies. So even though there is the cross-border within specific zones, like say maybe a EU or a GCC is going to stay, my cross-border from across the globe, is it going to stay? That's a big question mark. Will I have to build inventory for my entire GCC market in one of the countries? Maybe yes, right? I would have to look at my entire sourcing strategy so that my supply chain is agile, at the same time resilient to such shocks, right? So I will not end up compromising my customer demand because of these situations. And lastly, I think there is a lot of progress that has happened over the few years. Again, this crisis is now accelerating that. How will my entire fulfillment operations look like, right? So now that this has sparked the debate on the health and wellness of all the employees, so how does basic design of fulfillment centers change in the coming few years, right? How will I put in place social distancing norms? How will I put in place material handling norms to ensure that all of this is being handled in a very hygienic and at the same time something that is efficient to the business and to the customer? I think a lot of focus is going to go towards that. Again, robos, a lot of fulfillment technology is coming into play, but not to the extent of replacing humans. How can I make the existing humans more efficient, right? How can I make them more efficient with augmented robotics or wearable robotics, right? So all of this is going to see a major upswing. And there's also been a lot of debate about what's going to happen to my retail stores now that there is this entire lockdown that's going to here to stay, and will customers be comfortable going to the shops to purchase or even return, right? So in that case, I think there is a definite case, and I think there is a definite merit in exploring a few of these stores as micro fulfillment centers, right? As dark DCs. So as a dark DC, I can fulfill, I'm close to the customer, and I can maybe fulfill my orders from within the inventory placed in the stores in a far more efficient way than I would from a traditional large scale full box FC that is somewhere on the outskirts of the city. So all of these are challenges, but again, out of these three challenges, I see at least 5 or 6 new opportunities coming up for technology, for innovation, for employment, for a bunch of these things. So yeah, if I have to just summarize it, one is my last mile capacities, last mile ecosystem, my sourcing strategy, and my fulfillment operations. These three are going to be the biggest challenges and areas for growth for the next few years at least.
Yeah. So, Bharath, actually, on the first point that you just spoke about, having sort of someone leaving the delivery at your doorstep, we have a poll around it that we planned, and interesting that you brought it up. I'll try to launch that poll now. Okay. So basically, there are 3 types of models that companies in the Middle East are experimenting with in the last mile delivery. Right? The first is you have a click and collect model where you order online and collect it from store. Second, you do locker deliveries that Bharath also talked about, where you collect your goods from specific lockers. And third, leave at a door service. Right? The courier guy leaves the package and you pick it up from the door. And maybe the courier guy just takes a pic as a proof of delivery. Right? Now, the poll that we have is, I'll just launch it. Yeah. Which among these 3 models do you think have the biggest potential to grow in the Middle East, looking at all the constraints that are out there? And I hope you can see it on screen. The first option is click and collect, second locker deliveries, third leave at the door. We have around 150 e-commerce experts in the attendees, so I think it will be a great poll, see what the industry thinks.
Interesting, yeah.
This would be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
Any guesses, anyone?
I think the best way is like, as consumers, how would we like it, right? I mean, how would you prefer it, Shibu and Bahaa?
Yeah, in fact, I must share. I'll take this opportunity, if you permit me, to share something with you. Our CEO always tells us one thing. When we come up with different strategies, plans, he just tells us one thing. It's exactly what Bharath said. Become a customer and see what you need. You'll get the answers. there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's e-commerce. You go to you become a customer for 2 minutes, do a purchase with any other website, and see the challenges that you have. Every time we ask him something, this is what he says, and by God's grace, we consider him to be the man with the golden touch. So every time he tells us this, and this is exactly what Bharath was saying. You become a customer, you get the answer to everything.
Yep. So yes, we have a clear winner in this poll. I'm sharing the results. So 66% people think that leave at door is the model which has the biggest potential to grow. Any thoughts, panelists? Do you agree with this?
It's interesting, right? I think we may have multiple strategies, but at least at the end of the day, what customer wants, he or she wants, right? So,
see, it's all about convenience, and I actually expected that leave at the door would win, because it's always e-commerce is all about convenience, right? I'm ordering online because I'm gonna get it at my doorstep. I don't want to go anywhere, right? And the variety and availability and all of that, but convenience always wins. So as long as I can still get it and I don't move anywhere, so that will always win. However, I think we would see another push from the business side on the click and collect. Retailers need to capitalize on what they actually have now. So you would see a lot of retail shops that are not properly functioning at the moment, and that's an opportunity to look at for click and collect, and how the distribution of inventory works, and how this could potentially actually affect delivery performance and delivery promises. The thing that you would before wait for it to come 2 days or 3 days, you could easily get it 20 or 100 meters away from where you stay, and at the friction of the coast. So I think there would be two waves: the convenience wave from the consumer side versus the optimization and the optimization wave from the retail side.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Bahaa. I think these lot of physical stores that are out there, which probably are not getting utilized as much, they would act as a good point for click and collect model. Right? And this is something what Bharath was talking about some time back, right? Use these as small mini fulfillment centers closer to the customers. Yep. Okay.
Pranshu, I would like to add something there, in terms of the retail stores with the kind of space that has been allocated. The drive with the kind of restrictions which are there in place, 30%, even the parking lots have changed accordingly. So I think a good area within the stores also might be allocated for customers to just come up, pick up and go. In the sense, there are some product categories where one would like to come and see. So I think it also would depend on what is the purchase being made. There could be a good number of purchase. If it is essentials, groceries, you would like it to be left at your doorstep. But if it is some other product category which you need the touch and feel, that's where the retail stores could play a very important role. And you could also have the drive-thrus coming in, like what you have in KFC and McDonald's. You come and collect it and go. So very soon you can see malls actually coming up with these facilities, because the parking places which are available there, 30% of it being allocated. So there is a huge space available. I know of a big e-commerce player today having converted the parking lot into an office. So you see, these are the options available, not just the click and collect, which I know many of them, whoever is been strong in retail, they have been implementing this. But I think they'll take it to the next level also, where there could be a good section of the retail display area, which could be allocated for customers to just come, pick up and go. So that could take away a good part of the overheads that is there with the retailers.
So we'll just pick up one question from the panelists, from the audience. Shibu, this is for you. How do you plan to mitigate 15% VAT challenge in Saudi beginning July?
Well, that's a very tough one. I just hope that it will not come in. Any sort of cost, I think, would have to be seen into the supply chain. This is where I said the supply chain is going to be very critical, because your pricing would also, if you're going directly to the end consumer, the pricings would be changing. So I think the end result, it does not mean that if the 15% is going to be executed, which they have said, and I still hope that it's a long way off. But if this is coming into place, I still believe that the supply chain would be worked out in such a way that this is not passed on to the end consumer. Rather, it can be taken care in the supply pricing of the supply chain itself, is where I would look at it. And that's where the cross-border shipments also will actually help. You know, this is why I said that this could be the opening to a bigger share for cross-border shipments. Suddenly you will see the prices and new players coming in, and that is where it may not be mitigated initially. It could be, there could be challenges, and that is what I think I just mentioned some time back, you know, the supply chain and the closed door meetings on the short term and the long term ones is something which is going to decide this. But if in case, to answer it straight, if in case this comes into place, I do not think that it will be passed on entirely to the consumer, because there will be changes within the supply chain. And that's where the courier companies will come into play. The software companies that give us support to select the couriers will come into play, the preferential rates. So all these things probably could help us mitigate, if not remove it completely, to at least remove the burden to a very large extent.
Yep. So while we are at the point of pricing of the supply chain, right? Bahaa, a question to you. What has been the impact on the unit economics for a courier company during these times?
See, logistics, such as any other industry, supply and demand affects the entire cost structure. When it comes to costing, and when it comes to pricing as well. So what happened is we've seen a lot of shortage of capacity, right, everywhere, and a hike in things like the air freight, as Bharath said. So there were a lot of quick changes that affected the unit economics big time. So one of the things I want to highlight here is the regulations, or the regulators' rule in that game, and how logistics should start taking regulations more. Logistics providers, I mean, should start taking regulators more serious.
That's for Bharath. So, Bharath, how would you be handling the return goods, right? Would they be processed in a separate house with increased safety precautions, or any innovations happening there in the reverse logistics part?
So, okay, interesting, right? Again, returns has been the most underserved component in the entire e-commerce supply chain, right? So far, be it the process, be it with technology, be it with the customer experience, right? Mm-hmm. So returns again has been a big driver of customer experience, be it the lack of a great experience or a great experience during returns, right? So even before this pandemic, it was a very neglected part of traditional e-commerce supply chains, but now, with the entire hygiene coming into foray, I think this has sort of pushed even returns into the discussion now. So if you ask whether returns are being processed differently, yes. As with any other material handling, returns will also be treated with the necessary PPE by the employees. They'll be processed by sanitizing the packets once they reach the FC, and then once they're sent back to the storage. But beyond that, I think this happens with any goods that come into the FC and that leaves the FC and that gets delivered to the customer at the end of the day, right? So there's not a major departure from the regular practice here. But what will tend to happen is the ease of returns, the ease of getting it back for sale, the ease of making the product ready for sale, the ease of ensuring the customer gets the refund or a return or an exchange for that. I think that will see a lot more acceleration now, right? So there are a bunch of technology companies like, I don't know, like Returnly, like Optoro, like Zigzag. A lot of these are currently working on solving this problem, right? So how do I ensure that the customer gets a refund as soon as it's returned, it's picked up, or it's initiated? And how can I, going one step further, how can I ensure that as soon as I place a return request, I get an exchange for that as well, right? In most cases, customers do look for exchanges. And because of some of the inherent challenges in respective supply chains, that's not made possible. Even if it's made possible, it's a premium offering and it's not for all the customers and comes at a price. So there are a lot of technical or technology interventions that can happen here. And another interesting offshoot of this would be the entire re-commerce bit, right? So how do we ensure that items that are returned, how do we ensure that they are ready for sale, maybe on a different platform or at a different markdown or for a different set of customers, right? So that will see a lot of acceleration with this. Having said that, there is another school of thought that says now during this pandemic, returns is at an all-time low because people just don't want to place returns. I mean, they don't know when, if they place a return, when they'll get something else back. Yep. Or even if they place a return, will someone come and pick it up, right? Mm-hmm. Major retailers like Nordstrom and all in the US, they have relaxed their entire return period from what was 30 days to now 90 days. Mm-hmm. And some of them have gone forward. Zappos has gone forward to say that I'll give free returns till the end of this year. Zappos has always been known to be maverick and a revolutionary in terms of customer service, but I mean, this is where the industry is going, right? But if you ask me, is there anything specific to the pandemic? I would say very little, apart from the regular hygiene practices in treating any goods that come in and leave the FC and is handed over to customer. But from a technology point of view, there is a lot of scope for innovation and a lot of scope for progress in all the areas that I mentioned, right? So that's how I would see returns panning out over the next few years, Pranshu.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Adding to this, one more about Pudo that I was talking about, right? Pick up and drop off. So pick up and drop off, once a partner has a sufficient enough or a dense enough network, I think that will again see a major traction how goods will be returned. I would rather just drop it off myself rather than just drop it, get it collected by a courier partner coming to my house, or me driving down to a store that's like 15-20 minutes drive away. I wouldn't prefer to do that.
Yep. I think we have exceeded the time by 4 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't think we would be able to take a lot of questions from audience. We have about 38 questions, but I think most of them have already been covered in this discussion. Okay, I think we are close to the end of the session. Any last comments that anyone in the panelists you guys would want to make?
Yeah, Bharath, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Unfortunately, right, this pandemic has forced all of us to think differently about many things, right? So obviously, from starting with how we work, how we spend our time, to how business is done, how we buy products. So I think sustainability or success of a strategy now will come from thinking about how do we adapt to this new situation rather than saying that this is anyway temporary and, I'm going to go back to my strategy 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line. Assuming that this is going to be the new normal for the next foreseeable future, how do I strategize my existing resources to ensure I give the best possible experience to my customer, I give the best possible value to my customer, and to all the stakeholders involved, starting with the employees of your team. I think that's where we'll see a lot of discussion going forward. And again, this pandemic has sort of forced us to think about fundamentals, things that really matter, right? Removing all the frills. What matters to the customer? How fast can I get my product? When can I get my product? Is it the best value possible or not? And at a very, very granular level, how we look out for each other, care for each other, do we empathize with each other, right? Because what I see is a lot of customers have actually been very accommodative of this entire challenge, right? So even I know a lot of customers have escalated to me saying that, hey, you know what, I didn't get my order. A lot of them have also said, I understand the situation now. Can you tell me when I can get this? I understand that there's been a delay, but can I get this, right? And I think a lot of this positivity has translated to some staggering numbers as well, right? So if you look at it, last month has been one of the best months for me in terms of delivery percentage. a lot of customers have been more willing to accept shipments, outside of SLAs, right? So yeah, I think hopefully there's a lot of positivity in society in general, but also I think we'll see a lot more innovations and a lot of product interventions happening in supply chain and e-commerce in general.
I couldn't agree more with what Bharath has just mentioned. I think he summarized it pretty well. But yes, Pranshu, thank you for having organized this. It was a nice initiative. I think the questions and the subject was very relevant. One thing that I would like to add here is that, there has been, what will define the future is the adaptability and of course the flexibility that we have. Yeah, we all know that we've been in our comfort zones. We've been pushed beyond it. Mankind, we lost many things, the human values is what is coming back today. And if I were to just sum it up, I think change is the only thing which is constant. So let's face this change in a positive way, because there are a lot of positives which are going to come up from this. That yes, I have myself seen how accommodative the customers have been. There have been some demanding customers, but yes, overall in general, the attitude of customers have changed completely. They realize the challenges, they realize there has been a delay, the number of returns have decreased. So in all this that has been going around us, let's look at the positives. I think there are a lot of positives which is surrounding us, and it's a matter of time before things get back to the new rather than the old one. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pranshu, for arranging this, and we're actually looking forward to having more of these sessions. And yeah, now we have more time for it, and we look forward to reconnect again and listen, of course, from the industry experts.
Sure.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, panelists. Thanks, Shibu. Thanks, Bahaa. Thanks, Bharath. It's been really great talking to you guys. Thank you all the attendees. Unfortunately, we were not able to take a lot of questions, but I think most of them would have been covered. Thanks so much and stay safe. I'll close the session.
Thank you. Thanks.